Dārgie kolēģi, dear colleagues, please take your seats in order to start our final session. Kolēģi, sākam pēdējo noslēdzošo sesiju. Baltiņas kundze, lūdzu piesēdiet, lūdzu savā vietā. Runājām personīgi. Jā. Tātad, lūdzu visi, kas ienākuši.
Everyone who has entered, please take your place.
To finish our business. And then now some people are already go to the airport. Daži cilvēki devušies ir uz lidostu, bet tie ir varējuši šeit. Tātad sākam noslēgumu sesiju.
Let us start the final session. Our task in this session is to listen to reports of work groups. Rapporteurs from each group will present their reports. The first work group will be the group number 1. The rapporteur is Annija Mazapša. Thank you. In the first work group, we discussed the DI process for people with mental disabilities, and there were 3 main ideas. The first one is that it is important to ensure their participation in the DI process, taking into account their views. The second one is that the social system needs to be changed, ensuring the flexibility of services, ensuring that it is tailored to personal needs. It is also necessary to use NGOs as resources because the governments and parliaments change every 4 years, but NGOs last for a longer time and they have resources to be used and also knowledge. When discussing whether people living in institutions could also adapt themselves to living among the community, we realize that it's not the question about their capabilities or abilities, it is about public support. There are several factors that need to be taken into account. The first one is best examples from other countries. Secondly, local communities need to get involved, admitting that people have mental disabilities and proposing the changes that could be made, introduced. Then other people could also admit that they have some mental disabilities. Even though we think that smaller municipalities have less resources, it is actually not true, because in smaller municipalities people know each other better and finding resources might be easier. It is necessary to educate the public. Yes, we know there are general campaigns on mental disabilities and what they mean, that people shouldn't be afraid of this fact. However, it's important to educate professionals, not only policemen and judges, but also such people as salespeople and policemen. Often disabled persons admit that they are discriminated on a daily basis in the mentioned environment. Because because stereotypes are established based on the lack of knowledge. For instance, I can mention my own example. I used to have prejudices against the Arabs when I traveled in these countries, but it is just an imaginary thing in my head. We should also pay attention to families and the close people because it is the natural form of support that exists. The families need to be educated about disabilities. They also need to be informed about the community-based services. Very often people are placed in institutions because of a lack of options. In these situations, parents should not be blamed for the choice they have made. They may have been forced to make this choice. It would also be necessary, as I previously mentioned, to change the social system and not try to place people within certain frameworks and make them comply with certain criteria. Clearly, we're going to face certain problems in this process. People in the community, among the community, are going to face problems as well. The world is not perfect, and the local community is not perfect either, and it will not be perfect. But the question is whether by hiding somebody from the society, we are helping this person. We should be the pioneers of this change in the society. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mazapša, for a very constructive and concentrated summary. The next speaker is Sandra Braunere. She is the manager of SOS Children's Villages in Latvia. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to exchange views. I will report on the three subjects. When discussing the DI, the presentations were interesting. Unfortunately, not everyone saw them. The first one was Alex Tresler's presentation on implementing the monitoring of children's rights, how to implement it in practice. He reminded us of the UN Convention on Children's Rights. He stressed that sometimes it is not deliberate evil that we do to children. It is also something that we do not do that can harm children. Therefore, we have to have a clear understanding of how our work influences children and what the political processes are, as well as the ethic code. Mr. Tresler also introduced us with 4 standards developed by the association. In the beginning there were 11, but in the end they have 4. The introduction of these standards is a prerequisite for children's security, and also the reputation of the organization. In the discussions, the participants agreed that it is very important for each organization to understand the consequences of their action and to develop certain standards. Yes, there is legislation, but It is a framework within which we put the content ourselves. And speaking about various financing programs, there is often the requirement that what they do complies with the general requirements. The second speaker was from Norway, Oslo University. He spoke about good practices in family-based care for children. And there we discussed what can be done when in a situation where the children are already away from the family. But we need to work on preventing this so that families are trained. He talked about improving the parental skills. And then the second step is out of family care and foster care. Compared to Norway, we see that there is a space for growth for Latvia. The topic of the discussion was whether we take into account children's interests and whether we have the opportunities to provide this care tailored to their interests. The answer is not always certain. The third group was Galina Markova from the New Bulgarian University. She spoke about the importance of a system considering individual needs. She reported on the Bulgarian experience in providing support for children with severe disabilities. She represents the Center for Alternative Care for Children. And she spoke about the good practices of DI and also challenges. Bulgaria has a great experience. They have accomplished a lot, but still there are many children who have no parental care and also children who live in institutions. One of the challenges is that it's very difficult to change public attitudes and stereotypes against children and also bad parents, if I may say so. And similarly, as stated in the first part of the day, she spoke about the importance of individual approach when dealing with children with severe disabilities. These children get attached to the one person that is important in their life, either parents or the caretaker. In Latvia, speaking about risk factors, it could be lack of staff, lack of long-term vision, cooperation with institutions. I don't know how many representatives there are from schools today and the health ministry, but this situation may be resolved only working together. Social work has a bad image in Latvia. If I, as a mom, have to go to social services, I will not perceive it as assistance. And to conclude, I would like to say that only by loving we develop ourselves and develop others. And Virginia Sotera, a U.S. family therapist, has stated that we need 4 hugs to survive, 8 hugs to live and 12 hugs to develop. We need to remember this in the context of children. Thank you. Thank you for the inspiring last sentence. I would like to say to everyone that you will be able to access these presentations. Each of you will receive a link to the website of the Latvian Welfare Ministry, so no worries about that. The next speaker will be Māris Grāvis. He's the chair of Association of Rigas City Rūpju bērns. He worked in the third world work group. I participated there, it was very interesting.
Good evening, it's my pleasure to be here and present the results. You may not believe, but everything was great with us. We had a wonderful moderator, a wonderful performance from Zirks, and many excellent presenters, Greg Krosberg, Marika Stickings, and Jana Hainsworth, that spoke about different aspects of child care. We had excellent participants in our group. We had also wonderful conclusions, and the basis, I believe, is the conclusion that nothing about us without us. We can't take a decision instead of others. We three different work groups, and the conclusions supplement each other. These services must develop from service providers to love providers, love for children fosters and promotes further development and further life. Services are a very important part for the person who receives them, and the basic question is, what is really important for the particular person? What is important for the adolescent or a child? And in this way, we can really evaluate them correctly. And we come to the conclusion, when we evaluate conclusions, we need to take into account technical criteria like the number of square meters or emergency exits and so on, especially by involving the service receivers and getting to know their opinion. A client who needs a higher number of square meters but getting more love will have much more benefits than just the square meters. A compulsory precondition is that the person should have a choice to choose the services. If there's only one service or one service provider, we cannot provide the opportunity to choose, and we cannot secure qualitative services. In this way, we see that an individual budget is a very good thing, where the person can have a say, and that this has caused great interest in other countries, and also they are thinking about ideas how to implement it. We know that special services stigmatize, while general services are different, but for that these people need individual support, and that should come the sooner the better, the earlier the better in their life, especially that refers to teachers in general schools. These teachers must be specially prepared and trained, and on the other hand, there must be a system where they can turn for help. We also discussed how to measure services. Because it is clear that there should be indicators, and that must be based in realistic stories and situations that characterize the individual level. We have a conclusion that infrastructure in the 21st century should be accessible to schools, because that already means access to education, access to services, and inadmissible infrastructure should not be an obstacle to getting the services. We stated that by changing the system, first of all, we need to have a pilot project to see how it works. And we must be based in concrete data, in evidence, in concrete proof. Nothing about us without us, at all ages, for all people. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was all very true, and one of the examples that was there, you had an advertisement about cinnamon. In order to cinnamon ice cream, if there's one type, then there's no choice. And of course, as to individual budget, it makes sense if there is a choice and there is something to buy for that, because if there's only one service, it doesn't work. The family should be able to choose. And now it has come time for the final addresses. And here I have got 3 speakers. I would like to welcome you here. I was Lazarus, chairperson of local government health and social issue committee, and we see the Minister of Welfare visits us, and we have had very good contacts. I hope that Mr. Lazarus will confirm that all the facts that also our foreign experts established today. It is not only something that the Minister of Welfare has invented, but it is this event that is part of Europe and part of the world, and we also try to use the same words when we speak. That's why I'm happy to give the floor to you so that you can tell us about how we're going to live in the future. Now I can say good evening. It's already past 6. My presentation has been confirmed. It has been supported by the regional meeting, and of course everything develops, nothing remains the way it is, and there are many changes. Local governments are socially responsible partners, and we keep thinking, and we're active, and we're ready to participate. And many of the ideas that have been discussed here have also been addressed by our social workers and professionals. So what we shall certainly take a lot from what we have discussed today, but I also think that there are a few things that I might have changed in my presentation, but I wrote it before. We are all in the process of deinstitutionalization, which is a big challenge for us. Deinstitutionalization cannot rocket up, but it will develop up to improve the quality of life, to comply with the demands of human rights, even in those cases when the person doesn't know these rights himself or herself. And the society must be ready to support these people, and it's sustainable. That's why this arrow that I have drawn doesn't go up straight up into the skies, but it is a development forward and upward. What we are concerned about, they are still topical, but of course, starting with the 1st of July, we are starting to work out a deinstitutionalization plan for the local governments. I believe that these plans and their synchronization will be achieved in the regions. We should not be concerned about that. We just need to work at that. The bad news is that it is summer and it's annual holidays, but if the plans must be worked out, they have deadlines, and that certainly creates concern. We are concerned about the fact that there is lack of information about the adoption of regulations. Obviously, when they are ready, we shall have a discussion. I'm quite sure that the representatives of the minister will come over to us, because obviously they like it here. Further, the positive message that should be handed over to the Minister of Health Services. Is there anybody from Health Services in the whole of the House? There was someone. As to specialists, when we speak about social workers and their requalification, is a question that we can solve with these plans, but there is another issue, and these are the medical staff, and the good information that I have heard from Ms. Ahrens, that in some countries, these GPs are trained in psychiatry, so that they should be able to give support. Of course, it is the GP that can render this kind of assistance. We must make use of this practice, but of course we need support from on behalf of the Ministry of Health Services. Then about infrastructure, I fully agree that infrastructure is not an aim in itself. It should be subordinated to the needs of the clients. But still, we are concerned that we just do not know these plans. the local government must plan our meager budgets, and we need to plan for the future. And another point that is a proposal, the use of local governments, state and also the EU, their use application for the improvement of public property. We can't use at present this financing, that we can't even use it to install everything for in the toilet for a disabled child. It is not the correct solution. We try to go around this regulation in order to achieve it. We're also concerned that during the realization of the deinstitutionalization, these institutions will be closed down. What about the staff? What will they do? Where will they work? Even now, their financial status is not among the best. They do not really like comparison with prisons, but these people try to do this work to the best of their ability, and they try to help their clients. How effective is it, and what shall we do in the future? That's one issue, but also we need to think about the future of these people, of the staff. Now, a non-interrupted development of the services, their sustainability, in the social sphere. In the future, we are thinking how we can manage to finish if we have started it as part of a national or EU plan.
It will be closely linked to the next problem, to how we may be sure that our clients will not suffer, because we're talking about quality control and quality issues. I agree, totally agree that the main point is to provide love to these children and to return children to families. And people with mental issues might be in a different situation. There might be some reactions, negative reactions on the part of the community. Some mistakes might be made. The question is how to readapt these persons in the situations. We do not need homeless people or violence, as mentioned by previous speakers. And at the same time, criminality is not admissible, as well as deterioration of somebody's physical health. Some mass media might like this information, and I don't like indicating to people what they should do, but mass media could talk about the positive examples and try to educate the society. This is something that we could try to solve together. I think that municipalities and their informative newspapers and some other media might be ready to do it. I think it is one of the ways of educating the society and showing what we are going for. Of course, there will be questions about social business, about the cooperation with municipalities, because municipalities differ in size, and the capital city municipality is different from smaller municipalities, which might face a problem that they are unable to provide the package of services necessary for a particular client. Then another problem is the financial base. Last year we were forced, and yet we agreed almost unanimously on the national budget plan, which could have been better. But we all understand the situation in the country, and now we need to think about the future. The financial law is not acceptable to most municipalities. There are problems with financing. We're not willing to earn money in this DI process. But municipalities, especially the small ones, where the share of the receivers of social services might face financial problems, and it is not correct. The current law on financial distribution, on the distribution of financial means, does not envisage such parameters. We didn't discuss it at this conference, but there is a correlation between the social budget and the municipality budget. Speaking about the effectiveness of municipality budgets, we have chosen 15%. But this share in the budget of each municipality is different, and it's difficult to say whether a municipality has worked well because it's difficult to measure. But speaking in general about the DI process that we are undergoing, the municipalities understand it. And there is just one possible answer, that we are for deinstitutionalization. We discussed it also with the ministry, voicing our willingness to continue to cooperate. This meeting took level at the EU level, and we would like to continue this work together. We heard some good examples. We would like to continue exchanging experience and to show our good examples, and also admit the things that we haven't managed. The examples of good practice could be taken from some other European countries. And thus I would like to thank you. If you heard our problems, I am convinced that if you heard them, I'm convinced that you indeed did hear them. I hope for cooperation with our welfare ministry, but also with institutions at the European level dealing with social problems. Thank you. Thank you. I think this was also the place where it was possible for everyone to exchange contacts. My experience shows that these people are very open to an exchange of contacts. Now I will give the floor to Ms. Barča. She determines the future of our laws. There are many proposals. The Sejma Parliament has received many proposals. And we see there are some future developments. We would really like to see how it is going to develop. And Mr. Schwartz asked us about it, and I promised to report on it after Ms. Barča's speech. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, good evening. I would like to thank all conference participants for rich presentations, active participation in the discussions, and opinion exchange. The Social and Work Committee of the Latvian Parliament is glad that today we have reached an agreement that everyone has the right to choose where to live and who to live with, participate in community life, and take decisions on their own life. The EU Convention on Persons with Disabilities marks a transition in the core principle on perceiving disability from the medical approach to the social one. We need to attain that the state of health is no longer seen as the main reason of disability, but the consequences of it on individual functioning disorders combined with obstacles created by the society. As stated by many of my colleagues, the creation of successful inclusive social policy is closely linked to solving general social and economic problems. A successful individual's evolution and integration are not possible if developing only social services. Several speakers today drew attention to the fact that alongside with social services in the DI process, a great importance is attributed to health, education, and transport services, as well as adequate housing, innovations, and employment issues. The high requirements for employees and the automation of industrial processes creates additional difficulty, and the risk of unemployment for persons with limited working capabilities who find it increasingly difficult to find adequate employment, gain legal income, and form their pension capital. Nothing can be done without us if it concerns us. I can confirm that the Latvian Parliament has accepted it by cooperating with social partners. And therefore, at today's conference, I would like to say in the name of the Parliament's Social and Work Committee to Gunta Annija, the head of Sustento, and Andris Bērziņš, the head of Latvian Sumerians. Thank you. Latvia is also undergoing change. Therefore, these discussions have been especially worthwhile. At present, the Parliament's Social and Work Committee, as already announced by the Welfare Ministry State Secretary Ieva Jaunzeme, is debating amendments to the law on social services and assistance. These legislative amendments will actually start a new reform on social services for 3 groups of service receivers: persons with serious disabilities, severe disabilities, called the second group of people with disabilities in Latvia, as well as children with severe functional disorders and children out of parental care. Dear colleagues, I would like to openly say to you today that by amendments in the social law, it is not going so easy. There are many proposals. Discussions are underway, but they are going to be difficult and long. And why? Because there are many big issues. I also saw it today in the first part of in the first session of the conference after having listened to the presentations, as well as the report of Mr. Lācars. It means that there are many things to be learned from our colleagues in the European space. I have set objectives for myself. It means that this summer I have to get acquainted with the Norwegian experience. And I must openly say, I know a lot about other European countries, but what I heard from the Norwegian delegates, I see that we need to look at Norway seriously, at the Norwegian example, and to ensure that we do not make the same mistakes in Latvia. So I would like to promise this to you. The generation of ideas and policies are of no importance without policy implementers. And here I must admit that the whole DI process to a large extent depends on the involvement of municipalities and their ability to mobilize local resources. At the same time, we need to understand that our people deserve that we develop serious training programs, because people at municipalities need to be prepared to work with clients if we want them to return from care centers to our municipalities. And those people in Latvia who are waiting for institutional services in line, we should try to prevent it and try to integrate them in the community. As mentioned by speakers of the conference, the approach that is result and person-oriented is important. We will try to integrate it in the text of the law. What concerns childcare, I would like to stress the importance of early intervention and systemic work with the family. The family model is an undoubtable asset of human existence, and our duty is to do everything possible to retain it. I am fully convinced that by coming together and exchanging our views and sharing our experiences, we may attain better results. Despite the fact that each country has its own characteristics, the common trends do not differ significantly. I wish all of us success in implementing new methods, creating new cooperation networks, and improving the quality of life, especially for our clients. Thank you all for being here in Latvia and for caring about the future of various individuals of our society. Thank you.
Paldies,
Thank you very much to Ms. Mazapša for these kind words. I believe that the Embassy of Norway and also the Nordic Council heard about it, and we can organize a trip to Norway, or their experts may come down to us to have a closer look once again at the way that they have covered. It's very important when we analyze the experience of other countries. and think what we could do in addition. Over the last 3 years, I have been working with the theme of deinstitutionalization, and I have understood that this is a process will go on. It cannot be reversed, as a person has the right to choose, and we shall overcome all the obstacles that Mr. Lazarus mentioned. And these people will live among us, and we know very well that their relatives pay taxes and they have the right to choose. So it's just a matter of time. We can't really speed it up because the choice must be there. But all these trends will continue. There is no way back in the 21st century, and all that we have to do is to work together and find solutions for the problems that have been identified today in order to solve them. And now I would like to give the floor to Peter Lambrecht, who represents the expert group who started the process and started work elaborating guidelines for deinstitutionalization. And this is the expert group that could be of great assistance in order we should be able to achieve our aim. And that's why the final word to round it all up is over to you, Mr. Lambrecht.
I'm Peter, as was introduced. I'm from the European Network on Independent Living, but I'm here now representing the European Expert Group on the transition from institutional to community-based support. I'm happy to be one of the current co-chairs, together with Luc and Maria Herzog from the service providers and from Eurochild. Well, it's been a long day with a lot of interesting presentations and conversations and debates. I want to congratulate to you all to still be here and being attentive. I'm going to try to be short. So let me introduce to you the EEG, which has been mentioned quite a lot today. So for some of you it might be familiar, but it's very important to stress that the EEG is a broad coalition of, in fact, very different stakeholders. We represent different groups that are in need of support in one or another way, including children, disabled people, people with mental health problems, and family organizations, even homeless people. And in our group are also service providers, and the intergovernmental organizations like UNICEF or the Office of the Human Rights Commission of the United Nations. Sorry. As you see in this colorful slide, many different organizations. It's important to know that these organizations all are connected to societies in Europe. Lots of them have member organizations in different member states. And the accumulation of this is a big expertise. I thought. That's what I've said. And this is the colorful slide with all the logos that I was talking about. So all this knowledge brought together, all this expertise brought together gives a very strong group with and all very committed people who really are very much aware of the importance of this whole DI process. And in the name of this group, I also want to thank the Latvian Presidency for bringing this subject up, this interesting conference. What have we done with our group? You see the internet link on the slide, deinstitutionalizationguide.eu. There you can find our EEG guidelines and a toolkit. Currently it's translated into 14 languages, English, Russian, Lithuanian even. Not yet in Latvian, but maybe we can find a way to get it translated into Latvian also. It's a very useful document. Here you see a picture of it. I want to promote it a bit because it's everybody who wants to work on the DI for a specific group in different countries, they can all use these guidelines. They are, let's say, universal, applicable, if that's a correct way of saying it. The importance of such guidelines is, here I have a quote from the Council of Europe Human Rights Commissioner who states it, that the DI is becoming inevitable. But as was very well reflected by some of the previous speakers, is how are we going to do it? How are we going to set this process in motion and speed it up and make it effective and so on? That's not an easy task. It's a big challenge which was expressed a lot of times during this day. So we hope to help on that with this guidelines document. We also created a toolkit, which is especially interesting for the Eastern countries and the Baltic countries and so on, where a big part of the European structural and investment funds are going to. So this toolkit is very useful if you have ideas that could speed up the DI process in your country, and when the financing is a problem. There are considerable funds coming from Europe. They haven't always been spent in a correct way. Now, with the new ex-ante conditions and so on, we hope that in the future we can safeguard that they're all spent in a correct way and not to refurniture old institutions, as sometimes has happened. So it's important that also civil society is there to be part of the monitoring and to safeguard that there is not misuse, deliberately or not. The purpose of this toolkit is spelled out on this slide again. Maybe to save us some time, I won't read it out to you. You can all access the PowerPoint in a later stage. But I will spend a little bit more on our next slide, the EEG, because, of course, we have done more than producing guidelines and toolkits. With the EEG, we regularly have internal meetings where we all come together with all this news from our big network throughout Europe, bring together good evolutions, good practices that we can share with each other, that we can inspire each other with. Also, the bad tendencies, also alarm bells go ringing in our group here and there when things are going not good. Especially since the beginning of the financial crisis, we see that some member states, things are going backwards. Nevertheless, those states have signed the UN Convention and expressed their commitment on one side. They are sometimes doing opposite things on the other side. We try to be as effective as we are with the limited resources. We have different task forces which take up different parts of the work. And regularly we have open meetings with the European Commission also, where we can go into dialogue about the things we hear happening in the countries, the good things, the bad things, and we try to be a constructive and a positive influence there. We also have had a series of what we call country events or seminars, most of them in Eastern European countries, where we bring together a lot of stakeholders, and in fact it's focused on good implementation of these European structural and investment funds in a proper manner, that they really bring the deinstitutionalization closer. We have a supportive role there, and we work together with members of ours in those countries, but also the officials on member state level are very much involved there. In a way, we also act as an advisory body in relation to reform of institutional care on different levels. Europe can consult us, member states can consult us. For instance, in Slovakia, when they had their action plan on deinstitutionalization, they asked for our input. Not that the final result is exactly what we would always have hoped, but still we managed to get some input, and we are very much welcoming these kind of questions, and we will do our best to answer to them. One thing we also do is to give trainings on DI, what it really means and how to understand that to the EU officials, because it's not only a matter of knowing the right terminology, but it's a matter of really understanding what's behind that. And we can't expect all people who have been educated in different ways in the old style of thinking to know this spontaneously. So we hope that these trainings can make a difference also. We organize events. One example of that is the hearing in the European Parliament that we organized in December of last year. Also in that, with the goal to raise awareness, but also to give advice and recommendations to the European institutions. And we have many lobby activity in that field. To give one example is our press release that we brought out today. I think there's still some hard copies on the table there in the right back corner of the hall here, where we are worried that we see that the country-specific recommendations of this year are not really reflecting the commitment on the eye that the European Commission has been stating. It's like a missed opportunity or a wasted chance to promote the institutionalization. And let's not forget that the country-specific recommendations are about one of the only tools that we have left to also reach those countries that are not using big parts of the structural investment funds in the west and north of Europe. So it's very important that also there the institutionalization process is continuated and speeded up and understood in the proper way. One thing that we see in Western European countries is that in many times the quality of the institutional care is higher. It looks better for the outside world, but that doesn't mean that people are still institutionalized. And this in-between step is one that I hope that could be skipped in Eastern Europe, because it's been a waste of time and a waste of money in many perspectives. To wrap up, don't forget that deinstitutionalization and Article 19 of the UN Convention and the CRPD in its whole is speaking about fundamental human rights that we all enjoy. And in the process of DI, we see all these obstructions coming up, financial reasons, maybe community isn't ready for that, or we have other priorities, we're going to shift it on a longer term, all very maybe understandable objections from one point of view, but if you remember that, or what are we going to do with the staff if we break down the institution and so on, but remember all those arguments are inferior to basic human rights and the right to be equally living in community as other people. So we can debate a lot about that, and it's good to be constructive and find solutions, because it can be concerns for many people, but it shouldn't be never an argument to slow down or stop the deinstitutionalization process, because in the end I don't think any state wants to be denying human rights. I think there are very few countries left in the world where they will publicly do that. So I'm going to wrap up here, just maybe as a final challenge. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. It's not invented by me, this slogan, but it's very applicable. So thank you all for this, and yeah.
Paldies Lambrechts kungam.
Thank you, Mr. Lambrechts, for reminding us the priorities, and the priorities are human rights. Thank you for reminding us that we need to find solutions and also the places where we may look for solutions. And the Commission promised to provide a Latvian translation 3 years ago, but I don't know what happened. I have seen both documents. They are indeed useful. Now let us return to our workplaces tomorrow and apply the experience we gained during the first session, and prepare a one-page document on deinstitutionalization. What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? This one-page document that our colleagues in the morning talked about. This will help us to understand what the situation is, and as I say to my colleagues, when talking about DI, we need to think about one category of people. They are parents who have sick children. And now they come and register their children. They stand in the line because they have no other alternative. They say, we're going to die sooner or later. We have to do something. And thinking about the DI process, we don't have to think about some abstract persons. We need to think about these real people who say, what will you offer to my children when I'm dead? It is not a solution to say to the mother that there will be some institution. And this Thursday, it will be discussed how to find solution for these parents after their death. People who have spent all their life in institutions will most likely finish it in the institutions, but those who have just come there, they shouldn't stay there, and we should guarantee it. And my partners from public organizations need to be thanked for their involvement. And Ms. Barch already thanked Zelda, as well as other partners. They take a part of the burden off our shoulders. It is very good that they do it. They organize groups of assistance. But we need to help them all together to provide this choice. Thank you everyone for participating in the conference today. The presentations will be available on the website. Enjoy dinner and have a good trip home and have a good day tomorrow. Thank you.